Have you ever wondered what truly creates a visual legend in the fierce Kpop universe? We aren't just talking about handsome faces, we're witnessing a complete cultural reset. The kind of breathtaking beauty that stops time, crashes internet servers, and leaves even the most stubborn non-fans in pure awe. Is it just pure genetics, or is there a mysterious magnetic aura that makes them effortlessly outshine every other artist out there? Today, we're diving deep into the undeniable, world-dominating visual supremacy of BTS. What exactly makes their stunning looks so incredibly untouchable and legendary? Let's uncover the truth.
Number 7. RM. The golden ratio of charisma, intellectual elegance, the command center. The moment he steps onto a global stage, the entire atmosphere changes completely, shifting from chaotic energy into a state of absolute, breathless reverence. Because Kim Namjoon does not just walk into a room, he commands it with an overwhelming, majestic physical presence that completely redefines what it means to be a visual icon in the modern entertainment era. Standing at an impressive model-like height of 181 centimeters with exceptionally long legs, broad athletic shoulders that look as if they were meticulously sculpted by classical artists, and a flawless posture that exudes natural nobility, he immediately shatters the traditional, delicate stereotypes often associated with K-pop idols. His visual appeal is a masterclass in sophisticated masculinity, a rare and mesmerizing blend of raw strength and deep intellectual elegance that captivates audiences worldwide, making him stand out as an untouchable force of nature. When you look closely at his facial structure, you begin to understand why plastic surgeons and visual experts frequently analyze his proportions with absolute fascination. He possesses a striking, sharp jawline that carves a perfect silhouette from any angle, complemented by uniquely mesmerizing monolid eyes that can pierce right through a camera lens with profound intensity. Yet the true magic of his face lies in the breathtaking contrast of his features, because the second his fierce, commanding gaze softens into a warm expression, two deeply set, perfectly symmetrical dimples appear on his cheeks, creating a profound psychological shift that instantly melts the hearts of millions. This fascinating duality, the powerful, unyielding leader of the world's biggest group, transitioning effortlessly into an incredibly charming, gentle, and approachable human being, is a visual superpower that very few human beings on Earth possess, allowing him to connect with people on an intensely emotional level. His evolution from a fiercely passionate underground rapper with edgy, rebellious styling into a global cultural ambassador, high-profile art connoisseur, and the sophisticated face of ultra-luxury fashion houses like Bottega Veneta is nothing short of a cinematic masterpiece. International photographers and fashion elites are constantly drawn to his magnetic aura, noting that he possesses an innate understated luxury that doesn't rely on flashy outfits or over-the-top styling. Instead, he elevates everything he wears through pure, unadulterated confidence and a profound sense of self-awareness. Think back to his historic appearances at the United Nations General Assembly, or his commanding presence on the Grammy red carpets, where he stood tall, radiating an unparalleled statesman-like dignity that commanded respect from world leaders and Hollywood elite alike, proving that his good looks are deeply tied to his immense inner strength and brilliant mind. This rare combination of intellectual sexiness and physical grandeur creates an entirely new benchmark for visual excellence, one that completely bypasses the typical cookie-cutter aesthetics of the industry to establish a timeless, universally respected standard of beauty. His face tells a story of resilience, wisdom, and artistic passion, with every subtle expression conveying a wealth of emotion that leaves an indelible mark on the viewer's soul, making it impossible to look away. On stage, during high-octane performances like Run BTS or deeply emotional tracks like Wildflower, his physical expressiveness takes on a whole new dimension, where his tall frame moves with a deliberate, powerful grace that anchors the entire group's visual dynamic, ensuring that your eyes are inevitably drawn back to him. It is this majestic, grounding energy, paired with an authentically raw and sophisticated aesthetic, that allows Kim Namjoon to easily surpass standard industry expectations, proving to the entire world that true visual supremacy is not just about facial symmetry, but about possessing an undeniable world-shifting aura that can capture the imagination of a global generation and hold it forever.
Number 6. Jhope, the luminous sun god, unmatched streetwear king, the golden silhouette. When we talk about an artist whose sheer visual magnetism absolutely demands your undivided attention the very millisecond the stage lights turn on, we are undeniably talking about Jungkook, a man whose physical presence is so overwhelmingly electric that it physically alters the atmosphere of any stadium he steps into, creating an unforgettable spectacle of pure visual dominance. Often celebrated by the global public as the radiant sunshine and the deeply hopeful spirit of the group, a much closer, more analytical look at his individual aesthetics reveals a terrifyingly sharp, high-fashion visual that completely shatters the restrictive boundaries of conventional K-pop beauty standards, elevating him into a completely untouchable tier of artistic and physical supremacy that other idols can only dream of reaching. Let us begin by deeply discussing the absolute masterpiece that is his facial bone structure, specifically focusing on his absolutely legendary side profile that has repeatedly left both seasoned international photographers and elite, highly critical plastic surgeons completely speechless, often citing the perfect aristocratic slope of his nose bridge as a rare anatomical marvel that catches the stage lighting in the most dramatic, cinematic way possible. This isn't just a conventionally handsome face designed for teen magazines. This is a remarkably chiseled, meticulously defined work of living art, featuring a jawline so dangerously sharp and angular it looks as though it could easily cut glass, perfectly framing his beautifully expressive almond-shaped eyes that harbor an intense, fiery depth capable of speaking volumes and conveying incredibly complex emotions without him ever having to utter a single word. But what truly makes Jhope's visual impact so incredibly devastating and far superior to the standard, highly manufactured industry visuals is his legendary mind-bending duality, the profound psychological and physical transition from the beloved Jhope, the warm, endlessly smiling angel with those iconic, naturally heart-shaped lips that instantly radiate pure joy and comforting warmth, into J, the fiercely intimidating, dangerously alluring stage god whose intense, predatory gaze can make the collective hearts of millions skip a beat in a mere fraction of a second. This spectacular, jaw-dropping switch is not just a rehearsed act or a cheap stage trick. It is a profound physical transformation where his entire aura darkens, his posture shifts into something undeniably dominant, and his face takes on an aggressively sexy, commanding expression that absolutely paralyzes the audience and leaves them practically begging for more. Think back to his historic, monumental, culture-shifting solo performance at Lollapalooza in Chicago, affectionately known across the globe as Hobie-Palooza, a massive cultural milestone where he stepped out onto that massive main stage in an entirely all-black, grunge-inspired high-fashion ensemble, completely redefining what a Korean superstar looks like on an international rock stage. During that legendary hour and a half, with his long, naturally wavy hair sweeping carelessly across his forehead, his fierce, unyielding eye contact, and his dangerously captivating rock star charisma, he proved to the entire world that he possesses an elite, rugged masculinity that absolutely cannot be manufactured, bought, or trained by any entertainment company on the planet. His body, rigorously sculpted by decades of relentless, elite-level street dance training, boasts a uniquely lean, incredibly powerful dancer's physique with astonishingly perfect proportions, exceptionally long limbs, a perfectly structured torso, and broad, masculine shoulders that make even the most avant-garde, notoriously difficult-to-wear clothing pieces drape over his frame flawlessly, as if they were custom-made solely for him.
This naturally brings us to his absolute, uncontested domination of the global fashion world, seamlessly transitioning from the ultimate, trend-setting streetwear king who bravely and consistently experiments with bold, boundary-pushing outfits, oversized silhouettes, and chunky sneakers that would easily swallow any other artist whole, into the highly sophisticated, incredibly coveted global house ambassador for elite luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, sitting front and center at Paris Fashion Week and stealing the spotlight effortlessly from established supermodels, global fashion editors, and Hollywood A-listers alike. Jhope doesn't just wear high-end clothes, he completely absorbs and brings them to vibrant life, utilizing his impeccable, almost superhuman understanding of his own body mechanics and camera angles to create breathtaking visual moments that go viral across all social media platforms instantly, setting massive global trends with just a simple, seemingly effortless airport appearance or a carefully curated post on his incredibly aesthetic Instagram feed. Let's not forget the absolute visual reset he delivered during the Jack in the Box era, where he debuted an incredibly edgy, avant-garde style, sporting dark, textured hair, bold, dramatic makeup, and a hauntingly beautiful, almost villainous aesthetic that proved he is completely fearless when it comes to pushing visual boundaries, totally obliterating the safe, polished aesthetic that K-pop usually relies on. When he moves, the visual experience elevates to an entirely new stratosphere. Every single isolated muscle movement, every precise pop and lock, every fluid, gravity-defying extension perfectly highlights his physical perfection, making his visual appeal a dynamic, three-dimensional experience that static photographs simply cannot fully capture, even though his still images alone exude an incredibly vibrant, kinetic energy that jumps right off the screen. It is this intensely intoxicating blend of supreme, unshakable confidence, flawless high-fashion facial features, top-tier instinctual styling intuition, and a dangerously alluring stage persona that creates an absolutely intoxicating visual cocktail, permanently cementing Jungkook as an absolute visual titan in the modern music industry. While other artists might practice their facial expressions and camera angles for countless hours upon hours in front of a mirror to look perfectly appealing, Jhope's visual dominance is entirely instinctual, born naturally from the rhythm of the music, his raw, unadulterated passion for live performance, and an organic, undeniably powerful swagger that flows constantly through his very veins. He possesses the kind of breathtaking, deeply unconventional beauty that doesn't just passively ask to be looked at, it aggressively commands to be experienced, deeply felt, and remembered for a lifetime, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that true, supreme visual superiority is only fully achieved when unparalleled physical attractiveness is perfectly merged with explosive world-class talent, a fearless fashion sense, an insanely charismatic personality, and an aura so blindingly bright and powerful that it literally outshines the rest of the industry, leaving an indelible fiery mark on the history of global pop culture forever.
Number 5. Suga, the dangerous allure, the pale emperor of swag, the unapologetic genius. When delving into the profoundly captivating, almost intoxicating visual spectrum of this legendary septet, we inevitably encounter a deeply mysterious, quietly devastating force of nature named Min Yoongi, a man whose utterly unique aesthetic completely defies the traditional, highly manicured and overly energetic standards of the K-pop industry, replacing them instead with a chillingly calm, dangerous allure that pulls you in like an inescapable gravitational vortex. Unlike the typical hyper-polished idol who constantly fights for the center stage with flashy expressions and exaggerated movements, Suga commands absolute unwavering attention through the sheer unadulterated power of his introverted magnetism, proving that sometimes the quietest presence in the room is remarkably the most visually deafening.
At first glance, his physical features are a fascinating study in striking contrasts, boasting an ethereal, porcelain-like pale complexion that famously earned him his stage name, a flawless, milky canvas that perfectly highlights the sharp, piercing intensity of his uniquely feline, almond-shaped eyes, which possess a fiercely observant, almost predatory stillness that can effortlessly strip away your defenses with a single, lingering gaze. This intense cat-like mystique is heavily amplified by his beautifully structured, delicate facial proportions, yet the very second he allows a moment of genuine joy to slip through his stoic armor, that intimidating, icy exterior violently shatters to reveal his legendary, heartwarming gummy smile, an incredibly endearing, childlike expression of pure sunshine that creates one of the most drastic, psychologically jarring, and utterly addictive dualities in the entire history of global entertainment. However, to truly understand the sheer magnitude of Yoongi's visual dominance, one must look beyond the surface and delve deeply into the raw, fiercely rebellious, and beautifully scarred aesthetic of his alter ego, Auguste D, a cinematic visual masterpiece where he fearlessly embraces a rugged, untamed, and aggressively masculine energy that completely obliterates the conventional pretty boy idol image, replacing it with the aura of a battle-hardened, modern-day monarch. Think back to the monumental, culture-shifting music video for Dektrita, where he famously stepped onto the set portraying a mad, tyrannical king, adorned in stunningly intricate, traditional Korean hanbok, sporting a striking, deeply symbolic, and dangerously sexy faux scar across his right eye, while wielding a sword with an arrogant, unyielding swagger that sent absolute shockwaves across the entire globe, instantly, permanently altering the internet's collective brain chemistry and establishing him as an untouchable icon of dark, rebellious beauty. He seamlessly continued this cinematic, heavily narrative-driven visual supremacy in his Hagum era, portraying two brutally distinct, warring versions of himself, one a sleek, impeccably tailored, cold-blooded boss, and the other a chaotic, street-smart rebel with a wildly bruised and battered face, proving his unparalleled ability to act and convey profound, gritty emotion through nothing but raw facial expressions, body language, and a fiercely unapologetic, devastatingly handsome screen presence. This unapologetic, fiercely raw aesthetic was further elevated to absolute legendary status during his earth-shattering long hair era in late 2022 and early 2023, a period of time where his luscious, dark, shoulder-length locks became a global obsession, perfectly framing his sharp jawline and adding an incredibly romantic, darkly poetic, and effortlessly sensual dimension to his already captivating presence, proving that he doesn't need elaborate styling or heavy makeup to look like a literal masterpiece fresh out of a gothic romance novel. The sheer cultural impact of just an ordinary selfie he posted during this era would instantly crash servers and break trending algorithms worldwide, leaving fans pleading for him to close his camera roll because the visual attacks were simply too overwhelming to process. Furthermore, the global fashion industry has fiercely recognized his intensely unique, quietly luxurious visual power, leading to his highly prestigious appointment as a global brand ambassador for the iconic luxury house Maison Valentino, where creative director Pier Paolo Piccioli personally chose him as a Valentino Divas, not just for his striking physical beauty, but for the profound authenticity, deep artistic integrity, and the brilliantly unapologetic individuality that he effortlessly exudes every single time he steps out into the public eye. When he dons a perfectly tailored Valentino suit, often in bold, monochromatic tones that flawlessly contrast with his pale skin, or an oversized, effortlessly chic casual fit for his notorious airport appearances, he transforms into the absolute epitome of quiet luxury and sophisticated rebellion, wearing the high-end garments with a nonchalant, laid-back elegance that loudly screams, "I am the boss," completely overshadowing other artists who often look as though the clothes are wearing them rather than the other way around. Let us also talk about a highly specific, deeply beloved visual point that constantly drives his massive fanbase into a state of absolute frenzy: his incredibly beautiful, heavily veined, and exquisitely expressive hands, which are frequently highlighted when he plays the piano, strums his acoustic guitar during the wildly successful D-Day solo world tour, or passionately grips a microphone, serving as a raw, tangible testament to his decades of relentless musical dedication and adding an incredibly alluring, masculine detail to his overall aesthetic that makes him feel incredibly grounded and profoundly real. When you combine this with the deeply touching, extremely subtle visual reveal of his minimalist 7 friendship tattoo, delicately placed on his shoulder, an area carrying so much history and physical trauma from his past surgeries, his body becomes a living, breathing canvas of deeply moving personal history that elevates his attractiveness far beyond superficial looks. On stage, his visual presence is nothing short of a masterful, meticulously calculated performance of dark charisma. He doesn't rely on overly choreographed, exhausting dance breaks to capture the audience's attention, but instead he utilizes a deeply hypnotic, effortlessly cool swagger, spitting rapid-fire, emotionally charged verses with an intense, fiery passion that perfectly contrasts his normally lethargic, laid-back demeanor, creating a highly explosive visual and auditory experience that leaves millions of fans completely spellbound. His deep, gravelly voice perfectly complements his sleek, dangerous visuals, creating a sensory overload that makes him completely unforgettable, deeply captivating, and wonderfully intimidating all at the same time. It is this exact, incredibly potent combination of his undeniable musical genius, his fiercely guarded yet deeply vulnerable emotional depth, and his strikingly unique, feline-like beauty that transforms Min Yoongi into a completely untouchable visual titan, a man whose good looks are not just a product of great genetics, but a profound reflection of his brilliant, complex soul and his relentless, inspiring journey from a starving underground producer in Daegu to a massively powerful, globally respected superstar who sells out arenas worldwide entirely on his own terms. He proves with absolute terrifying certainty that true visual supremacy is deeply rooted in authenticity, unshakable self-assurance, and the rare, magical ability to convey an entire universe of emotion, raw power, and breathtaking elegance simply through the intense, unyielding gaze of a beautifully unapologetic, fiercely independent artist who has conquered the entire world entirely on his own terms.
Number 4. Jimin, the ethereal swan prince, the master of genderless elegance, the mesmerizing stage commander. As we plunge deeper into the mesmerizing, unparalleled visual pantheon of this globally dominating septet, how could we possibly ignore the man who completely rewrote the very definition of modern beauty and artistic fluidity? Have you ever witnessed a human being who looks as though they stepped straight out of a celestial painting, yet possesses the fierce, heart-stopping intensity of an absolute stage demon? We are, of course, talking about Park Jimin, an artist whose breathtakingly unique, undeniably ethereal aesthetics transcend the rigid, outdated boundaries of conventional masculinity and femininity, creating a totally new, historically significant standard of beauty that has completely captivated the entire globe. From the very first second the camera catches his face, you are instantly drawn into a deeply hypnotic visual experience that feels both incredibly delicate and overwhelmingly powerful all at once. Let us take a deeply analytical, profoundly fascinated look at his astonishing facial features, a masterclass in divine proportions that frequently leaves elite beauty experts and renowned cosmetic surgeons in a state of sheer disbelief. His face is a magnificent, harmonious contradiction, boasting incredibly sharp, meticulously chiseled jawlines that can effortlessly cut through the thickest tension in any room, paired with impossibly soft, beautifully plush lips and uniquely enchanting, slightly asymmetrical monolid eyes that seem to hold the deepest, most melancholic secrets of the universe. It is in those profound, intensely expressive eyes that the true magic of Jimin's visual supremacy lies, capable of shifting seamlessly from an innocently sweet, crescent moon eye smile that radiates pure, unadulterated sunshine and melts the hearts of millions, to a dangerously seductive, piercingly cold glare that commands absolute submission and makes even the most casual viewer gasp for air. This legendary, heavily discussed duality, the rapid, deeply psychological transformation from the adorable, deeply beloved Mochi who exudes a warm, comforting, angelic aura offstage, into the ferociously alluring, fiercely intimidating stage god who completely consumes every single spotlight, is a visual and performative superpower that no other K-pop artist could ever hope to replicate with such devastating authenticity. But what truly sets Jimin's visual impact apart from the rest of the highly manufactured idol industry is his unparalleled, deeply ingrained background in classical and contemporary dance, a rigorous, elite-level discipline that has fundamentally shaped not only his incredibly toned, exquisitely proportioned physique, but also the profoundly graceful, fluid way he navigates the world. He does not simply walk, he glides with an innate swan-like elegance, completely aware of his own body mechanics to the absolute millimeter, allowing him to create breathtaking visual art with every subtle movement, every extension of his limbs, and every tilt of his neck, proving that true beauty is not just a static image, but a dynamic, kinetic poetry in motion. Think back to his monumental, culturally resetting solo performances, such as the hauntingly beautiful, emotionally devastating masterpiece that is Lie, or the fiercely seductive, wildly theatrical spectacle of Filter, where he flawlessly transitioned through multiple, intensely captivating visual personas in mere seconds, proving that he is not just a singer, but a masterful visual storyteller who uses his body and his striking features to paint profoundly emotional landscapes. His absolute uncontested mastery over his physical expression allows him to effortlessly blur the lines of traditional gender fashion, fearlessly embracing corsets, delicate lace, striking chokers, and beautifully tailored high-fashion pieces that would completely overwhelm a lesser artist, but which he elevates into an absolute triumph of modern, genderless elegance. This fierce, unapologetic visual identity naturally led to his highly prestigious, history-making appointments as the global brand ambassador for massive luxury titans like Dior and Tiffany & Co., where he effortlessly broke the internet and completely paralyzed the streets of Paris Fashion Week simply by existing, drawing crowds so incredibly massive and hysterical that global fashion media declared him the ultimate, undisputed global IT boy of our generation. When he steps onto a red carpet or poses for an elite high-fashion magazine cover, he does so with a quietly overwhelming, incredibly expensive aura, projecting an untouchable royal majesty that makes him look less like a pop star and more like a modern-day deity who has descended to Earth to completely redefine what it means to be breathtakingly beautiful. His hair alone has become a massively influential, globally tracked cultural phenomenon, whether he's sporting his iconic, deeply romantic silver locks that made him look like a mythical ice prince during the Blood, Sweat, and Tears era, or his fierce, strikingly bold black hair that heavily accentuates his pale, flawless complexion and intense dark eyes, proving his uncanny ability to completely digest and own any visual concept thrown his way. Every single visual choice he makes, from the exquisitely delicate, profoundly meaningful tattoos that peek through his stage outfits, hinting at a deeply sensitive and poetic inner world, to the incredibly intricate, beautifully executed stage makeup that perfectly highlights his otherworldly features, is executed with a meticulous, unparalleled attention to detail that showcases his deep, unyielding respect for his craft and his audience. He possesses the incredibly rare, almost magical ability to make every single fan feel as though he is looking directly into their soul, utilizing a deeply intimate, immensely powerful screen presence that completely shatters the barrier between artist and viewer, leaving an indelible, fiery mark on the collective consciousness of pop culture history.
Why do millions of people across the globe find themselves completely and utterly hopelessly enchanted by his every move? Is it the perfect mathematical symmetry of his face, or is it the profound, fiercely passionate soul that shined so brightly through his eyes? The undeniable truth is that Park Jimin's unprecedented visual supremacy is a magnificent, deeply complex tapestry woven from supreme, God-given talent, relentless, bone-breaking hard work, a remarkably pure, profoundly empathetic heart, and an insanely intoxicating, beautifully fluid aesthetic that completely destroys all existing boundaries. When you gaze upon him, you are not just looking at a handsome face, you are experiencing a monumental, paradigm-shifting cultural event that continuously pushes the envelope of what artistry and visual perfection can truly achieve. Other K-pop artists might rigorously train to look perfect on camera, meticulously calculating their angles to manufacture a flawless image, but Jimin's allure is entirely organic, breathing life into every single frame and turning the simple act of existing into a mesmerizing world-class exhibition of living art, thereby cementing his permanent, untouchable legacy as a breathtaking visual titan who absolutely dominates the entire global entertainment industry.
Number 3. V. The CGV masterpiece, the baritone prince of vintage romance, the visual singularity. When discussing the absolute pinnacle of human aesthetics, where the lines between breathing reality and flawless digital artistry completely blur into an indistinguishable masterpiece, we must immediately bow down to the overwhelmingly majestic, globally paralyzing presence of Kim Tae-young, a man whose sheer physical perfection has rightfully earned him the legendary industry moniker of CGV, meaning computer-generated V, because his looks are so unimaginably flawless, they appear to have been meticulously rendered by an elite graphic designers rather than born of mortal genetics. From the very moment he was spectacularly revealed as the secret, hidden member of BTS, it was abundantly clear that the entertainment world was completely unprepared for the devastating, tectonic shift his visual debut would cause, setting off a massive, unstoppable chain reaction that would eventually lead him to be crowned the most handsome face in the world by countless prestigious international publications and elite beauty panels year after year. Let us dive intensely into the staggering, breathtaking science behind his facial architecture, a literal textbook example of the revered golden ratio that leaves seasoned plastic surgeons and highly critical physiognomists completely breathless, frequently pointing to his flawlessly sculpted, incredibly prominent E-line, the perfectly aligned curve connecting his nose, lips, and chin as an impossibly rare anatomical miracle that simply cannot be replicated by even the most skilled scalpel. His face is a majestic, harmonious battlefield of striking contradictions, featuring a remarkably sharp, ruthlessly angled jawline that exudes an aggressively powerful, hyper-masculine dominance, which is then brilliantly softened by his uniquely fascinating, deeply enchanting, mismatched eyes, one featuring a distinct double eyelid and the other a striking monolid, creating a deeply hypnotic, slightly asymmetrical charm that draws you in like a deadly, inescapable siren's call. It is within those large, fiercely expressive eyes that Tae-young holds the absolute power to completely subjugate an audience, utilizing an intensely sultry, dangerously lingering gaze that can effortlessly convey 1,000 beautifully tragic, unspoken stories in a mere fraction of a second, an innate, God-given theatricality that makes every single stage performance feel like a heavily emotional, high-budget cinematic experience.
But what truly makes his visual impact so incredibly devastating and far superior to the highly manufactured, overly polished standard of typical K-pop idols is the profoundly shocking, psychologically thrilling contrast between his impossibly beautiful, almost angelic face and his deeply resonant, soulful, and heavily textured baritone voice, an impossibly deep, velvety auditory weapon that strikes directly at the listener's core and completely rewrites their entire sensory experience. This magnificent duality, the breathtaking visual of a romantic, ethereal prince, paired with the dark, heavy, and intoxicating sound of a seasoned jazz veteran, creates a wildly addictive, fiercely unique artistic identity that makes him an utterly untouchable force of nature in the global music industry. His immense, undeniable talent for dramatic micro-expressions transforms him into an absolute stage demon, best exemplified in his monumental, culturally resetting solo performances like the hauntingly seductive Singularity, where he single-handedly manipulated masks, heavy velvet coats, and his own mesmerizing facial expressions to create an incredibly suffocating, intensely sensual atmosphere of dark romanticism that left millions of fans globally gasping for air and completely questioning their reality. We also cannot possibly ignore his legendary foray into the historical drama Hwarang, where he effortlessly proved that his breathtaking visuals translate perfectly to the silver screen, looking like a literal deity in traditional Korean garb and stealing the hearts of the general public with his deeply emotional, fiercely passionate acting debut that left fans absolutely begging for his return to the cinematic world. This innate, heavily theatrical flair seamlessly transitions into his uncontested domination of the global fashion sphere, perfectly culminating in his highly prestigious, history-making appointment as the global brand ambassador for the notoriously exclusive luxury house Celine, where the legendary designer Adi Slimane himself personally hand-picked Taehyung as his ultimate muse. When he famously attended the Celine show during Paris Fashion Week, the sheer, unadulterated chaos and massively hysterical crowds he drew completely shut down the streets, proving that his visual magnetism transcends mere pop stardom and firmly plants him in the elite, untouchable realm of global fashion royalty, wearing fierce leather jackets, heavily sequined tops, and dangerously chic, rock-inspired silhouettes with a nonchalant, dangerously arrogant swagger that screams pure, expensive rock star energy. Think back to those massive, internet-breaking viral moments that completely shifted pop culture, like his legendary, fiercely aggressive red bandana look during the mic drop era that permanently altered brain chemistry worldwide, or the incredibly striking, vividly blue hair he sported during Boy with Love that made him look like a breathtaking mythological ocean god, effortlessly proving his uncanny ability to totally absorb, digest, and elevate every single visual concept thrown his way. Yet lying just beneath this fiercely intimidating, high-fashion exterior is the profoundly endearing, incredibly warm soul of Kim Tae-young, a man who famously adores vintage aesthetics, classic jazz music, film photography, and his incredibly famous, deeply beloved Pomeranian, Yontan, heavily showcasing a beautifully nostalgic, warmly romantic side during his critically acclaimed Layover solo era. This incredibly raw, deeply authentic era allowed the world to witness a much softer, highly vulnerable, and beautifully unfiltered version of his visuals, sporting messy, completely unstyled hair, comfortable, oversized vintage clothing, and an entirely bare, makeup-free face that miraculously looked even more breathtakingly stunning than his heavily styled stage personas, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that his beauty is completely organic, fiercely natural, and entirely reliant on his own profound inner glow. When he drops his intense stage persona, his fiercely intimidating aura instantly shatters into a million pieces, replaced by his legendary, heart-melting, affectionately named boxy smile, an incredibly pure, intensely joyful expression of childlike wonder that instantly brightens the darkest of rooms and completely disarms anyone fortunate enough to witness it. This drastically polarizing, beautifully complex transition from a darkly seductive, highly dangerous visual predator to an incredibly sweet, deeply eccentric, and wonderfully affectionate human being is the ultimate, incredibly lethal weapon in his vast visual arsenal, deeply cementing a fiercely loyal, intensely passionate emotional connection with his global audience that goes far beyond superficial physical attraction. Every single time he looks into the camera, whether it be for a massive, heavily conceptualized music video shoot, an incredibly raw, late-night impromptu live stream, or an intensely glamorous high-fashion magazine editorial, utilizing his incredibly beautiful, remarkably elegant, heavily veined hands to frame his face, he effortlessly exudes an utterly paralyzing, wildly magnetic aura that aggressively demands absolute reverence. He continuously proves to the entire universe that true, unparalleled visual supremacy is not just about possessing the most scientifically perfect face on the planet, but about harboring an incredibly deep, profoundly artistic, and fiercely romantic soul that effortlessly shines through every.
Number 3. V. The CGV masterpiece, the baritone prince of vintage romance, the visual singularity. When discussing the absolute pinnacle of human aesthetics, where the lines between breathing reality and flawless digital artistry completely blur into an indistinguishable masterpiece, we must immediately bow down to the overwhelmingly majestic, globally paralyzing presence of Kim Tae-young, a man whose sheer physical perfection has rightfully earned him the legendary industry moniker of CGV, meaning computer-generated V, because his looks are so unimaginably flawless, they appear to have been meticulously rendered by an elite graphic designers rather than born of mortal genetics. From the very moment he was spectacularly revealed as the secret, hidden member of BTS, it was abundantly clear that the entertainment world was completely unprepared for the devastating, tectonic shift his visual debut would cause, setting off a massive, unstoppable chain reaction that would eventually lead him to be crowned the most handsome face in the world by countless prestigious international publications and elite beauty panels year after year. Let us dive intensely into the staggering, breathtaking science behind his facial architecture, a literal textbook example of the revered golden ratio that leaves seasoned plastic surgeons and highly critical physiognomists completely breathless.
Number 2. Jin, the worldwide handsome phenomenon, the sculpted god of proportions, the ultimate visual anchor. When we reach the absolute upper echelons of this breathtaking, globally dominating visual hierarchy, we are completely forced to confront a man whose facial symmetry is so scientifically perfect, so undeniably flawless, that he literally birthed a globally recognized viral phenomenon and officially trademarked the title of worldwide handsome, cementing his status as an absolutely untouchable visual god in the fiercely competitive Kpop universe. Kim Sik-jin. Let us travel back in time to perfectly contextualize the sheer magnitude of his massive visual impact, specifically to the 2015 Melon Music Awards, where he simply stepped out of a vehicle and instantly broke the Korean internet as the legendary car door guy, a deeply viral moment where the collective public was left gasping for air, completely mesmerized by his princely, heavily romantic features before he had even spoken a single word, only to casually repeat this massive, history-making feat on a global scale at the 2017 Billboard Music Awards, where he became desperately searched worldwide as the incredibly mysterious, breathtakingly gorgeous third one from the left.
This wasn't just a fleeting moment of lucky camera angles, heavy makeup, or clever stage lighting. This was the raw, unadulterated power of a face that has been scientifically analyzed, heavily measured, and officially declared by top-tier international plastic surgeons, renowned physiognomists, and elite visual artists as the absolute, undisputed epitome of the golden ratio. Possessing a remarkably perfect oval shape that is incredibly rare in human anatomy, his profoundly striking features boast flawlessly arched eyebrows that flawlessly frame deeply soulful, crystal-clear eyes holding a quiet, heavily melancholic depth, a perfectly sculpted, beautifully aristocratic nose bridge that gracefully leads down to his remarkably iconic, naturally plush, deeply cherry-like lips that have literally become a heavily coveted standard of beauty in their own right, all coming together to create an impossibly harmonious, fiercely elegant masterpiece that looks exactly as though it was meticulously carved out of pristine marble by the hands of Michelangelo himself. But to merely reduce Sikjin's visual supremacy to his undeniably perfect facial structure would be a massive, unforgivable injustice to the absolutely staggering, incredibly intimidating physical proportions he effortlessly commands the very second he steps onto any massive stadium stage or elite red carpet across the world. Standing exceptionally tall, with a remarkably regal, beautifully straight posture that exudes quiet authority, he possesses a set of famously broad, heavily muscled, aggressively masculine shoulders, famously and affectionately dubbed the Dorito body by astounded fans and elite fitness experts alike, that completely and wonderfully contrast his delicate, almost angelic face, creating an intensely overwhelming, deeply masculine silhouette that practically demands total submission and absolute reverence from anyone standing in his immediate vicinity. This astonishingly wide, heavily built upper body allows him to wear high-end luxury fashion with an innate, insanely expensive aristocratic elegance, making a simple, impeccably tailored tuxedo or a casually oversized, heavy designer sweater look like royal regalia, proving precisely why he was so effortlessly tapped as the highly coveted global face for immensely prestigious luxury houses like Gucci and Fred jewelry, where he completely embodies the ultimate aesthetic of old money sophistication, undeniable grace, and timeless, deeply classic romance. What truly catapults Sikjin's visual dominance far beyond the heavily manufactured, meticulously calculated standard of typical idol aesthetics is his wildly brilliant, completely unexpected, and beautifully chaotic personality that creates one of the most incredibly jarring, profoundly endearing dualities ever witnessed in modern pop culture history. He possesses the breathtaking, ferociously intimidating face of a serious, heavily brooding melodramatic actor, a raw, intensely emotional visual capability heavily honed by his prestigious acting degree from Jungkook University. Yet he actively and fearlessly chooses to completely shatter this icy, untouchable prince persona by shamelessly delivering heavily endearing dad jokes, letting out his famously contagious, wildly unrestrained windshield wiper laugh, and loudly declaring his own handsome status with an absolutely unshakable, wildly charming confidence that completely disarms the entire globe in an instant. This brilliantly self-aware, highly intelligent confidence completely transforms his good looks from a passive, unapproachable piece of living art into an incredibly vibrant, deeply welcoming, and fiercely magnetic charm that deeply resonates with millions of people, proving that true world-class beauty is infinitely more devastating when it is organically paired with genuine humility, razor-sharp comedic wit, and an incredibly pure, wildly generous heart that fiercely protects and heavily nurtures his younger bandmates.
Take, for instance, his deeply mesmerizing, incredibly haunting appearance in the iconic Blood, Sweat, and Tears music video, where he flawlessly portrayed a beautifully tragic, deeply conflicted protagonist, utilizing nothing but the incredibly subtle, profoundly expressive micro-movements of his perfectly sculpted face to convey a rich, intensely devastating narrative of temptation and innocent loss, a performance so visually intoxicating that it completely reset the global standard for what a visual center can truly achieve on camera. Every single time he simply looks directly into the camera lens, heavily utilizing those deeply set, profoundly emotional eyes that seem to hold the absolute weight of 1,000 untold cinematic stories, the entire world fundamentally stops spinning for a fleeting, beautiful second, utterly captivated by a man whose sheer physical existence completely defies logic and constantly redefines the absolute pinnacle of human attractiveness. When you watch him perform heavily emotional, vocally demanding solo tracks like Epiphany or The Astronaut, the visual experience is rapidly elevated to an entirely different, deeply spiritual stratosphere. As he stands completely alone under the blinding stadium spotlights, silver tears glistening beautifully in his dark, expressive eyes, his raw, silver-toned vocals flawlessly mirroring the heartbreaking vulnerability etched across his impossibly perfect face, he creates a cinematic, fiercely emotional tableau that completely paralyzes the audience and leaves them profoundly moved to their very core, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that his visual power is inextricably linked to his immense musical talent and his deep, beautifully romantic soul. Even after enduring the incredibly rigorous, highly demanding physical toll of his mandatory South Korean military service, he miraculously emerged in 2024, looking even more remarkably handsome, fiercely glowing with a mature, heavily grounded, and deeply dangerous masculine aura that instantly sent the entire internet into a massive, irreversible meltdown, proving that his legendary world-class visuals are completely immune to the heavy passage of time, extreme stress, or physical hardship. His incredibly lush, naturally thick hair, whether heavily styled up to fiercely expose his commanding forehead and sharp, deadly eyebrows, or left soft and incredibly fluffy to highlight his boyish, intensely endearing innocence, constantly set massive, wildly influential grooming trends across the Asian continent and beyond. He doesn't just casually participate in the brutal K-pop visual competition. He effortlessly serves as the absolute, undisputed anchor of BTS's overall visual identity, a deeply calming, fiercely solid, and impossibly beautiful foundation that fiercely balances the group's highly chaotic, explosive energy with his pure, unadulterated classic elegance.
Number 1. Jungkook, the golden pop titan, the apex of masculine sensuality, the ultimate visual phenomenon. When we finally reach the absolute, undisputed summit of this magnificent, globally dominating visual hierarchy, we are completely paralyzed by a man who didn't just casually participate in the brutal, fiercely competitive K-pop visual game, but completely rewrote the entire global rulebook, evolving spectacularly from the deeply beloved, wide-eyed teenage prodigy of the group into the ultimate, unmatched apex of modern masculine sensuality and a world-class pop titan, Jungkook. To truly understand the sheer, terrifying magnitude of his global visual dominance, one must first meticulously analyze the breathtaking, almost biologically impossible duality of his facial features, a brilliant masterclass in contrasting aesthetics that completely short-circuits the brains of highly trained beauty experts and leaves millions of devoted fans worldwide gasping for air. At the absolute center of his visual power are his legendary, incredibly large, naturally sparkling doe eyes, which inherently possess an intensely pure, deeply innocent, and wonderfully endearing childlike wonder that makes you want to protect him at all costs.
However, the very millisecond the heavy stage lights hit his flawless face or the beat of the music shifts, those exact same innocent eyes aggressively transform, instantly narrowing into a fiercely predatory, dangerously alluring glare that can effortlessly pierce straight through the thickest camera lens and completely subjugate an entire massive stadium in a matter of seconds. This incredibly hypnotic, deeply mesmerizing gaze is perfectly anchored by a remarkably high, elegantly sculpted aristocratic nose bridge and an aggressively sharp, heavily chiseled jawline that introduces a raw, dangerously masculine edge to his meticulously proportioned face, creating a wildly intoxicating, flawlessly balanced visual cocktail that is simultaneously fiercely intimidating and impossibly beautiful. But what truly catapults Jungkook's aesthetic supremacy into a completely untouchable, highly revered legendary stratosphere is his fiercely rebellious, intensely personal physical evolution, a brave, heavily scrutinized journey where he actively chose to heavily shatter the fiercely manicured, deeply conservative visual restrictions traditionally placed upon heavily manufactured K-pop idols. He fearlessly transformed his own muscular body into a brilliant, deeply meaningful canvas of raw, highly personal living art, proudly and unapologetically debuting a stunningly intricate, heavily detailed full tattoo sleeve that wraps beautifully around his incredibly powerful right arm, a deeply symbolic visual choice, beautifully complemented by an incredibly edgy, perfectly placed lip piercing and an array of frequently changing, wildly trend-setting hairstyles that seamlessly range from long, dangerously seductive wet curls that perfectly frame his sharp features to fiercely clean, highly structured modern cuts that highlight his classic, timeless handsomeness. This fiercely unapologetic, heavily rock and roll inspired aesthetic completely redefined what a modern Korean superstar is fundamentally allowed to look like, brilliantly blending an intensely gritty, fiercely authentic urban street edge with an undeniably expensive, world-class pop royalty aura that simply cannot be manufactured, bought, or trained by any entertainment company on the face of the planet. This raw, explosive, deeply authentic visual power naturally caught the immediate, incredibly desperate attention of the global fashion elite, most notably resulting in his history-making, heavily viral appointment as the ultimate global brand ambassador for the iconic, deeply sensual American fashion powerhouse, Calvin Klein. When the very first incredibly steamy, heavily anticipated Calvin Klein campaign officially dropped across the globe, featuring a remarkably confident Jungkook donning classic, deeply nostalgic 90s straight denim and fearlessly exposing his insanely toned, meticulously sculpted abs with a nonchalant, fiercely arrogant swagger, it literally broke the entire internet, crashing brand servers globally, instantly selling out the entire collection in countless countries worldwide and generating an absolutely staggering media impact value of well over $30 million in mere days, serving as a terrifying, undeniable testament to his absolute, uncontested global commercial and visual dominance. He doesn't just passively wear the high-end clothes, he completely devours the camera with an insanely confident, deeply relaxed, and aggressively sexy kinetic energy that heavily channels the legendary, heavily intoxicating aura of vintage Hollywood heartthrobs, completely erasing the deeply entrenched cultural boundaries between East and West to firmly establish himself as a universally desired, deeply hypnotic global sex symbol for a completely new generation. This massive, unprecedented visual and cultural impact was further heavily amplified during his earth-shattering, record-breaking solo era with the release of his monumental pop album Golden, where he effortlessly showcased a sleek, intensely polished, and dangerously smooth visual persona, heavily dominating massive, globally broadcast stages like Times Square and Good Morning America with the effortless, aggressively magnetic, fiercely fiercely undeniable charisma of a seasoned, legendary Western pop king, proving that his visual power is fully capable of carrying an entire massive global empire entirely on its own. His incredibly powerful, remarkably athletic physique, meticulously built through years of relentless, heavily disciplined boxing and elite-level bone-crushing dance training, allows him to execute breathtakingly complex, heavily dynamic choreography with a terrifyingly graceful, deeply explosive precision, meaning his visual appeal is not merely a static, heavily edited photograph, but a magnificent, fiercely kinetic, constantly moving spectacle of supreme human physical perfection. Every single isolated body roll, every impossibly smooth, gravity-defying glide across the stage, and every intensely passionate, heavily emotional vocal run is heavily punctuated by a face that simply refuses to look anything less than absolutely cinematic, a completely unfair, heavily blessed genetic jackpot that makes him the absolute, undisputed center of gravity wherever he goes, commanding absolute visual loyalty from anyone fortunate enough to lay eyes on him. Furthermore, his deeply prestigious, highly exclusive partnerships with ultra-luxury elite brands like Hublot heavily cement his untouchable status, not just as a trendy, heavily hyped pop star, but as a timeless, deeply sophisticated cultural icon who effortlessly navigates the highly exclusive, notoriously difficult worlds of high-end horology and elite global fashion with the exact same undeniable grace he brings to his live performances. Yet, despite possessing an intensely intimidating, world-shaking level of physical perfection that could easily make him seem completely untouchable and profoundly distant, he constantly and beautifully disarms the entire globe with his incredibly genuine, fiercely humble, and wonderfully goofy personality, frequently treating his massive, fiercely loyal global audience to highly intimate, incredibly raw late-night live streams where he comfortably falls asleep on camera, enthusiastically cooks midnight snacks, or casually sings highly emotional acoustic covers with a completely bare, beautifully flawless makeup-free face that miraculously proves he needs absolutely no artificial enhancement, stage lighting, or heavy editing to be the most breathtakingly handsome, naturally radiant man alive. It is this exact, profoundly intoxicating blend of explosive, intensely raw masculine energy, a fiercely rebellious, beautifully tattooed rock star aesthetic, an undeniably perfect, scientifically flawless facial structure, and a remarkably pure, profoundly authentic, and beautifully kind soul that firmly, permanently, and absolutely indisputably crowns Jungkook as the ultimate, supreme visual phenomenon of the modern entertainment era, a completely untouchable, deeply legendary titan whose breathtaking good looks do not merely beat the rest of the fiercely competitive K-pop industry, but entirely transcend it to permanently alter the absolute pinnacle of global beauty standards forever and ever.